Good day everyone. Today, we will be discussing about the Philippine government under American occupation. On November 1, 1897, the first Philippine Republic, known as the Biak na Bato Republic of 1897, was established. Emilio Aguinaldo and other revolutionaries signed the Constitution Provisional de la República Filipina, which was drafted in Biak na Bato, San Miguel, Bulacan. The Biak na Bato Constitution was written by Felix Ferrer and Isabelo Artacio in San Miguel, Bulacan. The Biak na Bato officials: Emilio Aguinaldo as President, Mariano Trias as Vice President, Antonio Montenegro as Secretary of National Welfare, Emiliano de Dios as Secretary of War, Isabelo Artacio as Secretary of Interior, Baldomero Aguinaldo as Secretary of Finance. This marked the establishment of a sovereign Philippine Republic and its separation from Spain. However, it only lasted 2 months as it was interrupted by the peace agreements brokered by Spanish Governor General Fernando Primo de Rivera, and this is called the Treaty of Biak na Bato. This treaty, also known as the Pact of Biak na Bato, stipulated that Spain would pay 800,000 pesos to settle the conflict between the two sides. However, there was a condition. The first condition, 400,000 Mexican pesos if Emilio Aguinaldo goes to Hong Kong and stopped the Philippine Revolution. Second, 200,000 Mexican pesos if more than 700 weapons are surrendered. Third, 200,000 Mexican pesos if general amnesty is declared. Fourth, an additional 900,000 Mexican pesos for damages inflicted by the war on the Filipino people. The total amount reached 1.7 million pesos in exchange for the Republic, which Emilio Aguinaldo immediately agreed to. Then he flew to Hong Kong and received the 400,000 pesos. Emilio Aguinaldo used the 400,000 pesos to buy weapons from America. On March 19, 1897, Aguinaldo returned to Cavite to resume the revolution with the Americans.
The Spanish-American War. The Spanish-American War was a brief conflict between the United States and Spain that took place in 1898. This war had a profound impact on the United States as it marked the nation's emergence as a global power and led to the acquisition of new territories. Prelude to war, the USS Maine incident. The immediate cause of the Spanish-American War was the sinking of the USS Maine, a U.S. battleship in Havana Harbor, Cuba, on February 15, 1898. The exact cause of the explosion remains a subject of debate, but it was widely believed at the time that the ship had been intentionally sunk by the Spanish. This incident fueled anti-Spanish sentiment in the United States and heightened tensions between the two nations. Declaration of war and key battles. On April 25, 1898, the United States declared war on Spain. The war was characterized by a series of decisive victories for the American forces. Battle of Manila Bay, May 1, 1898. Admiral George Dewey's U.S. fleet decisively defeated the Spanish squadron in Manila Bay, Philippines. This victory gave the United States control of the Philippines. Battle of Santiago de Cuba, July 3, 1998. The U.S. Navy defeated the Spanish fleet off Santiago de Cuba, effectively ending Spanish resistance in the Caribbean. The Treaty of Paris. The Spanish-American War ended with the Treaty of Paris, signed on December 10, 1898. Under the terms of the treaty, Spain ceded Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines to the United States. Cuba was granted independence, but the United States retained significant control over the island through the Platt Amendment. The Spanish-American War had a profound impact on the United States and the Philippines. It marked a turning point in American foreign policy and led to the acquisition of new territories which would ultimately shape the nation's role in the world.
The return of Aguinaldo. Emilio Aguinaldo, a key leader of the Philippines revolutions, was exiled in Hong Kong during the Spanish-American War. The U.S. facilitated his return to the Philippines on May 19, 1898 to support the anti-Spanish movement. His return reinvigorated the revolutionaries, leading to declarations of the Philippines' independence on June 12, 1898. Although this independence was not internationally recognized, the mock Battle of Manila. The mock Battle of Manila occurred on August 13, 1898. This was a staged confrontations between Spanish and American forces, designed to allow the Americans to take control of Manila without direct conflict with Filipino forces. The mock battle enabled the U.S. to secure Manila while sidelining the Filipino revolutionaries. This maneuver was part of a broader strategy leading to the Treaty of Paris, which ended the Spanish-American War and transferred control of the Philippines to the U.S. In essence, Aguinaldo's returns blusters the revolutions against Spain, while the mock battle was a strategic ploy by the U.S. to establish control over Manila, leading to eventual American colonization.
The dictatorial government of the Philippines, and also called as Spanish Gobierno Dictatorial de Filipinas, was an insurgent government in the Spanish East Indies, inaugurated during the Spanish-American War by Emilio Aguinaldo in a public address on May 24, 1898, on his return to the Philippines from exile in Hong Kong, and formally established on June 18. The government was officially a dictatorship with Aguinaldo formally holding the title of dictator. The government was succeeded by a revolutionary government which was established by Aguinaldo on June 23. In 1896, the Philippine Revolution began. In December 1897, the Spanish government and the revolutionaries signed a truce, the Pact of Biak na Bato, requiring that the Spanish pay the revolutionaries 800,000 pesos and that Aguinaldo and other leaders go into exile in Hong Kong. In April 1898, at the outbreak of the Spanish-American War, Commodore George Dewey aboard the USS Olympia sailed from Hong Kong to Manila Bay, leading the Asiatic Squadron of the U.S. Navy. On May 1, 1898, the United States defeated the Spanish in the Battle of Manila Bay. Emilio Aguinaldo decided to return to the Philippines to help American forces defeat the Spaniards. The U.S. Navy agreed to transform him back aboard the USS McCulloch. On May 19, he arrived in Cavite. The form of the government was then changed into a revolutionary one. The title of the chief of state was then changed from the dictator to president. Then was defined the object of the government as the struggle for the independence of the Philippines until all nations, including the Spanish, shall expressly recognize it, and to prepare the country so that the true republic may be established. At that time, the government endured until January 23, 1899, when the proclamation of the Malolos Constitution established an insurgent Philippines Republic government which replaced it.
The first Philippine Republic, also known as the Malolos Republic, was the first attempt at an independent government in the Philippines. It was established on January 23, 1899, following the Philippine Revolution against Spanish rule. The Malolos Constitution, adopted by the First Philippine Republic, was significant for being the first Republican Constitution in Asia, drafted by the Constitutional Convention in Malolos, Bulacan. It established a democratic government with a separation of powers among the executive, legislative, and judicial branches. The Constitution granted rights such as freedom of speech, press, and assembly, and it provided for a president as the head of state and government, with a parliamentary system for the legislative branch. It also emphasized civil liberties and the principles of popular sovereignty, although its implementation was short-lived due to the Philippine-American War, which led to the collapse of the First Philippine Republic later that year.
The Treaty of Paris, signed on December 10, 1898, officially ended the Spanish-American War under the treaty. Spain ceded the Philippines along with the Guam and Puerto Rico to the United States. The U.S. agreed to pay Spain $20 million as a compensation for the infrastructure Spain claimed to have built in the Philippines. The treaty also allowed Spain to export goods to the Philippines on the same terms as U.S. exporters for 10 years. The treaty was controversial in the U.S. because many Americans believe it was unfair to the Filipinos who had been fighting for independence from Spanish rule. The Filipino-American War broke out shortly after the treaty was signed, as a Filipino led by Emilio Aguinaldo resisted American control. Initially, many Americans opposed the treaty, but outbreak of the war and pro-imperialist propaganda convinced the U.S. Senate to ratify it, arguing the American control was necessary to stabilize the Philippines. The treaty marked the beginning of American colonial rule in the Philippines, which lasted until the country gained independence in 1946. It also signaled a significant shift in the U.S. foreign policy as the nation began to expand its influence overseas, becoming a more assertive imperial power.
The Philippine-American War, which lasted from 1899 to 1902, was a conflict between the United States and Filipino revolutionaries after the Spanish-American War in 1898. Spain ceded the Philippines to the U.S. under the Treaty of Paris. Filipinos, led by figures like Emilio Aguinaldo, had hoped to gain independence from Spain and were initially hopeful that the U.S. would support their aspiration for freedom. However, when it became clear that the U.S. intended to maintain control over the archipelago, tensions escalated into full-scale conflict. The war involved guerrilla warfare, brutal combat, and significant civilian suffering. It ended with the capture of Aguinaldo and the establishment of American sovereignty, but the Philippines would continue to experience significant political and social changes under U.S. rule until it eventually gained independence in 1946.
The American colonial rule. Following the defeat of Filipino revolutionaries in the Philippine-American War, the United States established its control over the Philippines. While the U.S. President did not directly administer the Philippines, he delegated authority through various institutions such as Governor General.
During the American era in the Philippines, 1898 to 1946, military governors were appointed by the U.S. government to oversee various regions, particularly in the early years after the Spanish-American War. Their primary roles included establishing order, implementing U.S. policies, and managing transitions from Spanish colonial rule to American administration. The military governors played a key role in the initial stages of American colonization before the establishment of a more civilian government structure. The First Philippine Commission, also known as the Sherman Commission, arrived in Manila March 4, 1899. President McKinley sent Jacob Sherman and some other members in the Philippines for the First Commission. The Sherman Commission is tasked to, first, look into the condition in the Philippines. Second, recommend a kind of government to be established. And lastly, relay to the Filipinos the noble aim of the U.S. Taft Commission. President William McKinley appointed the Taft Commission on March 16, 1900 to supervise the adjustment of the Philippine Islands government from military command to civil rule. The 5 members commission assumed legislative authority on September 1, 1900, less than 2 years after Spain ceded the Philippines to the United States following the Spanish-American War of 1898. On July 4, 1901, William Howard Taft, president of the commission, became the Philippines' first civilian governor. The commission defined its mission as preparing the Filipinos for eventual independence and focused on economic development, public education, and the establishment of representative institutions. The Commission went on to establish a judicial system, organize administrative services, and create a legal code that included law regarding health, education, agriculture, and taxation.
Civil government refers to a system of administration where a country or region is governed by elected or appointed officials rather than by military or authoritarian powers. This type of government is based on laws, regulations, and institutions designed to serve the public and maintain order in a democratic or semi-democratic manner.
The Philippines Bill of 1902. The Philippines Bill of 1902, also known as the Philippine Organic Act of 1902, was a key piece of legislation passed by the United States Congress. This law established the framework for the civil government of the Philippines, which had become a U.S. territory following the Spanish-American War in 1898. The purpose of the Philippines Bill of 1902 was to establish a civil government in the Philippines, replacing military rule. It created a bicameral legislature, introduced civil rights for Filipinos, regulated land ownership, and set the stage for economic and political reforms. The act aimed to guide the Philippines toward greater self-government, ultimately leading to independence.
In sum, the Bill of Rights is a symbol of democracy and freedom in the Philippines. It sets limits on government power to ensure that the rights of every individual are protected and the dignity of every citizen is respected.
The first Philippine Assembly was inaugurated on October 16, 1907 in Plaza Cervantes, Manila. This marked a significant turning point in Philippine history as it represented the first time Filipino had a national legislative body fully elected by their own people. The first assembly election and inauguration. The first nationwide election for the Philippines Assembly were held on July 30, 1907. Two major political parties dominated the election, the Nacionalista Party and the Progresista Party. The Nacionalista Party, led by future President Sergio Osmeña, advocated for immediate and complete independence from the United States and captured a majority of the 18 seats in the Assembly. The Assembly was inaugurated on October 16, 1907 at the Manila Grand Opera House. The event was attended by both top then Secretary of War of the United States and the new Governor General James Francis Smith. Osmeña was elected as the Speaker of the Assembly, with Manuel L. Quezon as the Majority Leader and Vicente Singson as the Minority Leader.
The Jones Law. Congressman William Jones sponsored this bill, which replaced the Philippine Organic Act of 1902. The Jones Law, also known as the Philippine Autonomy Act of 1916, was passed by the United States Congress. It was a major step towards granting the Philippines independence from the United States. It was also the first official statement of the U.S. commitment to Philippine independence. The law stated that independence would be granted as soon as a stable government can establish in the Philippines. The goal of Jones Law was to provide the Philippines with a greater self-governance while the U.S. maintained and protected its interests. The Jones Law granted Filipinos the right to vote for members of the Philippine Assembly, the lower house. However, the members of Philippine Commission, the upper house, were still appointed by Americans.
The Independence Mission. First Independence Mission, 1919. This mission was sent to the U.S. by the Philippines Legislature on February 28, 1919. The search result don't specify the mission's specific goals, but it was likely aimed at advocating for Philippines independence. Second Independence Mission, 1922, led by Manuel L. Quezon and Sergio Osmeña. This mission was sent to the U.S. 3 years after the first. Again, the search result don't detail the specific objectives, but it likely focused on continuing the push for independence. Third Independence Mission, 1927. This mission, also led by Quezon was sent to the U.S. by the Philippines legislature to disprove the Thompson Report. The Thompson Report was a controversial document that argued against granting Philippines independence.
The Commonwealth era and World War II. The Commonwealth era, 1935 to 1946, marked a significant transition period for the Philippines as it prepared for independence from the United States. Under the Tidings-McDuffie Act of 1934, the Philippines established a semi-autonomous government known as the Commonwealth of the Philippines. This period saw the drafting and ratifications of a Philippine Constitution, the election of a Filipino president, and the development of democratic institutions. However, the Commonwealth era was abruptly interrupted by the outbreak of World War II. The Philippines, as a U.S. territory, became a strategic target for Japan. On December 8, 1941, Japanese forces launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor in the Philippines. The Philippines was quickly overrun by the Japanese military, and the Commonwealth government was forced into exile.
Thank you all for watching this here.